Good evening, friends. Happy Thursday. Welcome to this edition of the Mystery Wine Blind Tasting. It's freezing out there. Are you chilly with this beautifully chilled white that we have tonight? I don't know. I was just talking to Kyle, and we were discussing how many people think that red wines are the right wines for cold weather. And I don't know. Fruity reds, not necessarily my thought. A deep, richer, more robust red. Yeah, smoky red for sure. But you kind of need that to accompany something. A big, deep, rich meal as well. So if you don't have that, sometimes a textural white is the right answer and just the right thing for all occasions, independent of the weather. And that's what we have tonight. So something fun for sure. If you're with us, chime in, let me know. Matt and Kathleen, good evening to you. So excited you're with us. Curtis, Renee, Bill, and Debbie, good evening, good evening. So nice to see you both again. Curtis and Renee got a chance to see me spitting 200 wines this past weekend or last few days at the Governor's Cup initial round, which was a great experience. And they are experts at handling all those wines and showcasing them for the judges. It's great to see you guys. Kavitsky's hello. If you're drinking a white wine in the snow, Sarah, you're going to a Rhone wine. That's a good call. Yeah. I mean, see, you're already pairing the right white with the occasion. And maybe we're there. There's color here. There's a little turbidity too. There's some stuff to talk about, of course, with this little number. I'm just saying that the bias against white, shouldn't be there for sure, even just because of the weather. I mean, the bias exists even in how we run this mystery wine series of tastings. It is largely speaking 2/3 or even 3/4 red to 1/3, 1/4 white, because most people prefer to taste red. So it's a treat and exciting to try white tonight. Rhyme intended. Oh, nice. Oh, Julie, it's awesome. I'm sorry I'll miss you. Actually, I'm going to be away on Saturday with some family who's coming, or we're headed out of town to visit some folks. So I will miss you, but I'm sure the team will love having you here and enjoy spending some time with you as they always do. We'll have some wines on hand in case you're interested. All right. Curtis, never before have truer words been spoken. The right wine is the one in your hand. That's great. What do we got, folks? We've got a white, so we can rule out even in the white world, right? Like you can't rule out the reds, but in the red world, you can rule out the whites. So this could be a white wine derived from the juice of a red grape, but probably not. The potential for this grape spans a whole host of varietals that we don't often get a chance to talk about, so we'll talk about them tonight. When we look at this, what do we see? Pale gold, Julie says, which I think is appropriate. There is a color quality to this, right? So when you're talking about white wines, you're talking about watery, lightly green tinged, yellow, golden, pale gold, amber. So something that's sort of think about an aged sweet wine, which could have this almost copper amber kind of color to it. So give it a swirl. Take a look at beyond the color, what you see. Rim forms. And I've got some tears there. They seem to be pretty slow moving, like pretty slow. And they form a solid leg that hangs. Yeah, these are incredibly slow moving. Wow. So with that pale gold and really low viscosity, thick, syrupy, like that says very weighty wine. So high alcohol, maybe, or residual sugar. So maybe there's some sweetness to this wine. That golden color and some sweetness doesn't seem inappropriate. And in that context, what wines do we know of that are sweet? Like that's just something you start thinking about. You don't want to prejudge that it is a sweet wine. We don't know. We'll find that out on the palate. But like, for example, if it turned out to be sweet and we're already building a portfolio, a profile that says, I don't know, Sauvignon Blanc, for example, light green tinged, lighter profile on the visual, and then grassy nose with grapefruity quality, and then a residual sugar? Not really. Like that's not what you're going to find in that grape. So already we know that this wine isn't, say, for example, Sauvignon Blanc. I don't think it's probably like the Pinot Gris, Pinot Grigio, right? It's got more color than that. Chardonnay's in the running. Chenin Blanc's in the running. You have Petit Manseng in the running, for example. It has that kind of goldenish color. Riesling might be in the running, although, gosh, you'd find it'd be pretty sweet, I think, by way of those tiers. So, all right. So it's got some color, pale gold. It has some viscosity, potentially high alcohol. So either late harvested, really ripe site. We'll find out more as we get there and taste this wine. Maybe there's a treatment to this as well with that darker color. So some oak, perhaps, some older vine material, some aging in the bottle or barrel, perhaps too, even treatment of the grapes themselves. So think about if we're talking about a sweet wine, for example, which I'm not saying we are. I'm not definitively jumping to that conclusion yet, but something that might be raisinated or dried, right? So something that has a botrytis effect to it, something that concentrates the grape, a mold, botrytis, a raisin, drying, frozen to give you concentration and color, but the drying element and the high sunshine content or the mold element might give you more of this golden hue. Certainly a riper profile coming from a really warm site. Think, let's say, California vis-a-vis Chablis, right? You get the sun-kissed grape skin and they turn deeper golden and they have even a kind of brown speckling because sometimes that can give you a richer profile. So, and the color. So let's smell this wine and see what we learn from the smell. Work the aroma, looking for a few things: fruit, earth, and wood. What do you smell? On the fruit side, picking up anything particular? On the earth, on the wood, spices, on the earthy things, mineral elements. On the fruit side, picking up tropical fruit. Are you picking up tree fruit? So thinking about apples and pears, stone fruit, apricots, peaches, things that have a pit. Julie's got some citrus, apple, some cut grass. Nice. Hay, straw. So Curtis picking up some of that too. And grapefruit for Julie with Meyer lemon. So, cut grass, grapefruit. We're back to Sauvignon Blanc as an offering. With the citrus and the apple, not so much, right? The apple, perhaps citrus for sure, but hay, straw. Meyer lemon, honeysuckle for sure, and the Chenin Blanc camp potentially. My daughter just texted me that I should take my glasses off. And if I do, I can't really see the comments, so I need to put them back on. That's where we're at. Yeah, light floral, like a white flower. I mean, I'm not particularly strong myself on my flower identification of aromas. And so white flower, red flower, blue flower, they have sort of a different profile, or it sort of equates to sometimes do you, when you taste wine, see color? Or smell wine, you see a color associated, and then there's a floral aromatic quality about it. So that floral aromatic quality meets the character of color. And so it's kind of white and floral, and that becomes part of how sometimes I think about the floral element in wine. Lychee or quince, nice. So there's some exotic kind of tropically elements, quince being that tree fruit, but quince oftentimes having that quince paste. So how we think of quince is more about the processed and sweetened paste or jelly that kind of is made from that. Hint of butter. It's safe to say that we smell a lot. There's quite a few things going on here, and a number of things that aren't necessarily particularly indicative of one grape per se. Like it's not all grapefruit and grass, i.e. Sauvignon Blanc. It is potential blend here, potential other varietal. Anybody picking up that mineral element? There's sort of a salty minerality here too. Ah, Curtis, thank you. Yes. And yeah, I completely appreciate that comment. There's a whole bunch of things here, but they're all slight. They're kind of muted. They're subtle, quiet. They're not in your face, jumping out of the glass. And they get better too as it warms a touch here and as I'm swirling more. Not that they intensify in their aroma, but that there are more of them and they become presented. It's like they're shy, hiding behind, and they're revealing themselves only after being coaxed out with a swirl. All right. So a lot of things going on and a wide range of options. It appears richer in appearance. It appears richer. It has a color that suggests something richer or sweet. It has a range of aroma that is somewhat tropical, somewhat tree fruit, somewhat processed, sweetened, a little bit of lactic buttery element. There's floral quality. So all of that to say that there could be a blend here or it could be a richer varietal. Let's taste the wine and see if there is residual sugar, and you'll look for that at the end of your taste. So if it lingers sweet, then there's residual sugar potentially. And try to parse out the difference between the sweetness potentially and maybe high alcohol. Sometimes ripe fruit profile, things that we associate flavor-wise and aroma-wise with something that is ripe or sweet, and high alcohol trick your mind into thinking that the wine itself has residual sugar and is sweet, when it's actually dry, but has those characteristics that evoke the idea of something sweet. Ooh. What's the first thing you remark upon with your first sip? What do you pay attention to most? What jumps out? If I have any indication from my reaction, 100% agree, Sarah. Wow, bunches of acid, tons of acidity. This wine is racy. It is by no means sweet. There is zero sweetness. It has high acid. It is a very rich, beautiful expression of acidity and richness, right? And so that puts us in a very small camp of grapes typically. And that, generally speaking, you could argue maybe some Chardonnay, but rarely does it reach that kind of level of acidity. And we'll get to the other components of the wine in just a second. But Chenin Blanc, Riesling, Petit Manseng are three. And you could argue a few others perhaps, but in that vein, those are the three that my mind jumped to immediately with this level of acidity. So light-bodied, Julie's saying. So in the world of wine, we're talking about that skim 2% whole milk kind of idea. You're thinking skim. You're going to taste it again because the first initial brace, see what I did there? Brace of acidity, the bracing acidity took me by shock. Okay, the weight. Let's talk about the weight of the wine. Does it sit on your palate with some weight? Does it fill in your mouth in a volume? Think about water and what water does, generally speaking. Does it just sheet over? That's your light. That's your light body. And moving up in a degree from that because you have alcohol and in wine. So there's a little bit more to that. Medium weight, some richness, some of that volume, some weight, some textural quality on the palate. And then full bodied, like you're going to have this volume. So this is more on the verging on the lighter side of expression because of the acid, but there's a textural element here. It's not super rich, and I'm not particularly picking up wood notes to add an extra richness. And so this is mostly about the grape and the grape presenting richness. We got to talk about structure here too, because there's acidity, which is pure and unadulterated and complete and long. And then there is the slight textural quality that comes maybe from alcohol. Is it hot? Are you getting a burn? Is there a heat here? Appreciate the ethereal comment there too. It has a lift, partly because of that acidity, but dances across the palate. That's nice. Nice descriptor. It's like it does have this kind of bouncing lift, partly because of that acidity, I think, but it's not like aerated. It's not cotton candy kind of floating across or cloud. Where it contacts, there's an imprint, but it's light on its feet, if that makes sense. And so it has this, every time you swirl it around, wherever it has been, you can retrace where it's been and still get a lingering sense of this wine. It's fascinating that way. High acid, medium plus alcohol, Curtis is noting. Yeah, I think we're in the medium plus. We might be sort of medium minus weight. Medium, I think, is comfortable. Medium weight, high acid. Salinity element there. With all that structure going on, what do you pick up in terms of the flavor? Are the flavors there? Because they are still, like on the nose in a way, behind the structure. They're not as front and center. And maybe they're really just punchy themselves, but they got to work through all that structure, all that acid to come out. Get that minerality, which goes really well, that saline minerality element, which goes with acid, that we can associate comfortably with that, with acid. Maybe even some flinty slate element too. What other elements? Fruit, is the fruit there? Is that quince there? Is that tropical element there on the palate? Is that apple? That citrus? Lemon? Yellow apple? Golden delicious? Maybe a little bit of it cut, left out on a plate for a little bit. It's got a little bit of oxidation happening, and it's more about that kind of very warm sun-drenched skin than it is the actual flesh of the apple. But that's subtle. It's very subtle. Wow. Okay. What do you think this might be? As you taste this, we've got real ripeness. We've got legs that are slow forming. We've got tons of acid, goldenish color, pale gold. We've got citrus. We've got quince. We've got apple. There was a grassiness noted, slate, mineral. Yeah, great variety selections here. Okay, perfect. So Sarah's thrown out Gruner, Veltliner, Peak Pool, Albarino, Cool Climate, Old World. Yep, Schunnen, Torrontés, Gruner, Veltliner, Acertico. Love it. Let's work through some of those. Kind of lead in Schunnen at the moment. Curtis, I'm with you 100%. Schunnen's in this mix for sure. The other wine that Julie just mentioned that I think is two wines that we should absolutely consider, Albarino and Acertico. Love that too. Gruner, let's work Gruner. So Gruner, when we've tasted in the past, right? This could be Gruner, could be very ripe Gruner. Yeah, it could be. It has an opportunity for that there. The acid just seems sharper and brighter and higher, but if we were drinking a very nicely made Gruner on the dry side of things, yeah. And It would, I think, though, have a little bit more savory note. Like it has that radishy note or the white peppery note or something else there. Peak Pool, I generally associate it being a little bit brighter, a touch more green, and not quite as golden. I could be wrong about this Peak Pool and have been wrong about other varieties in the past. But for sure, there's an opportunity there to consider Albarino. And Albarino could give you some of that apple. I think it tends more toward pear. The high acid is higher than Albarino can be, but I know Albarino to have that saline note, some of that citrus note. Chenin Blanc, absolutely all day, no question. We said lemon, we said apple, we said high acidity. Color certainly fits. Chenin has to be in the mix. And a Certico can have some of these characteristics for sure. That minerality, saline element coming through in spades on a Certico, and texture, and the acid. 100% great call on a Certico, because I think there's that saline mineral is not something we're going to find as much, on the Chenin Blanc side. And we're looking for that sort of waxy, beeswaxy, candle, lanolin that you might pick up if we're, say, in the Loire Valley in France with Chenin. And I'm not picking that up. Screw cap, always important to pay attention to the screw cap. New Zealand, South Africa, maybe. All right. So a Certico from Greece, mineral, hot, color coming from the skins. Certico checks a lot of boxes here. Lemon and the higher moderate kind of profile of alcohol. We're now at the witching hour of 22 minutes where wines begin to change, and this is no different. The alcohol is messing with me in that I'm picking up almost a faint honeyed quality, almost like a sweet apple element coming through, and that peaked out, just kind of poked its head out of the that last little taste, which pulls me back toward Chenin. So, just presuming Chenin Blanc or a Certico, right? A Certico, I mean, if you say a Certico and it's from somewhere else in the world, more power to them. But basically, you're saying Greece. You're saying Chenin, and I'm not making you say Chenin. The places you can really talk about, right? Principally the Loire Valley in France and South Africa being the dominant ones. Certainly have Chenin Blanc, even here in Virginia, have it in California, have it in Washington State, where I first had my first Chenin Blanc from a really cool Walla Walla producer, L'École 41. They make a wine called Walla Walla. And it was Chenin Blanc based with a little bit of residual sugar, and it was delicious. The Chenin from South Africa could have elements like this. Interesting. So you could have kind of that more waxy element coming from Chenin Blanc from Loire Valley to go with the apple, to go with the lemon, to go with the high acid. Maybe we're in Australia or South Africa, I keep saying that, excuse me. And you get some of this color, like there's a wonderful wine from Runhookti that we've served here before called Honey Bunches, which has this kind of color to it and then could be dry and ripe. So maybe we're talking about South African Steen or dry Chenin Blanc. And some of you now, it appears, are playing with Google, or, I mean, I've never done that in this context. Somebody, if you feel like you want to, and you want to put our descriptors into ChatGPT and ask them what wine it is, that would be fascinating to see if it nails it. And we can just all taste together with ChatGPT. Oh, cool. Julie, your friend's doing well then on the Certico side. That sounds great. She or he knows what they're doing. Recently had some of Gabrielle's, who's Gabrielle? I'm sorry, I don't know who that, Gabrielle Gruner. Fairly similar notes. Cool. That's awesome. I've had some Grossgewachs, some richer Grossgewachs, great growth, dry, single vineyard, powerful Gruner this way. Not quite the same acid usually that I remember, but it has a richness to it. And if we're drinking Grossgewachs Gruner at this price point, Julie found a true gem. So I'm playing the game more than the wine itself. Gabrielle Rousey. Oh, awesome. Is that it? Oh, awesome. Oh, neat. Okay. I have not had that wine that I know of. So that's cool. All right. So Chenin Blanc, Albarino. We didn't kind of nail Albarino, but the saline minerality of Albarino, the little bit lower acid that I would expect, not that it's devoid of acid because they're quite bright, but the color make this maybe not the right choice, but it has the minerality and some of the notes that I think are appropriate. One thing we did say right off the bat too is that the kind of spectrum of aroma might suggest blend. And I don't know now after tasting it, like there's a Rhone blend, right, is what we would kind of default to quickly, or a Bordeaux blend, but no real oak to speak of, and that Sauvignon Blanc kind of grass citrus note with Semillon, maybe, but the acid's really high. Price point definitely does work toward a Certico. I think there's more chance for that than yeah, than for that, for a blend. The blend, I agree, Julie, would maybe tone down that acid. The acid's just pure, and like pure in a way like coming from one variety, one expression. And so hard to argue that this would be a blend unless it was one dominant kind of really racy element to the blend and then a few things surrounding it to give us some of those flavor elements, but they're fairly muted. Trying to think of anything else we should consider. Nothing jumps to mind. I think I'm pretty comfortable. Well, I'm slightly uncomfortable picking one, the Sauvignon Blanc or the Certico versus the Chenin Blanc. Huh. ChatGPT thinks Sauvignon Blanc, Albarino, or Gruner. Well, let's see if we're better than them. So I'm going to go with a Certico, I think, just because, well, I think I want it to be. But it very well could be Chenin Blanc or, frankly, something else. I remember I love last time where I walked right past Malbec. I was like, no, it's definitely not Malbec. That's what it was. So plant your flags. South African Chenin or a Certico. I agree with that statement. But I got to pick one. And I'm going with the Certico. Vienna, Austria. Oh, cool. Damn. That's super fun. Right there. That's one of Julie's favorite things in the world. A Gemischter Satz in Austria. A blend of at least 3 grapes, Grüner Veltliner Riesling and Weissburgunder or Pinot Blanc, likely. It could be more. I don't know if it tells us. Could be bunches more. This is the Klosterneuburg Monastery Wine Estate. Was founded in 1114. Oldest winery. Nice. Yeah, so you've got right outside of Vienna, like in Vienna proper, you've got a series of vineyards on the hillsides, and they make a wine called Gemischter Satz. You can also use that term all the way through Austria when you have 3 or more varieties blended. But Gemischter Satz there, likely an old blend, field blend, tons of different things in the blend. Probably very difficult to figure out what actually is in the blend. There's numbers of varieties. We've tasted Gemischter Satzes before in the past that have, 10, 12, 14 varieties that they're still, barely identified. freaking cool Austrian wine blend. Did not diminish the acidity. Ripping. But I love the Assertical call. I love the Shannon call because I think we were on target, but I think there was no context that we were kind of pulling from, which was a mistake on my part in terms of leading us to the potential of a blend like this in Austria. All of those subtle aromas represented by a whole host of different varieties. And in this context, it's not necessarily like they're picking 4 rows of Gruner Veltliner or 4 rows of Riesling, and they're picking them at different points and blending them. There's oftentimes a complete smattering of one vine, one grape, one vine, another grape, and they're interplanted. And you can make multiple passes through the vineyard based on how the vineyard itself in certain spots is ripening. Sometimes you're going to get a very ripe expression of a grape and then a not ripe at all expression right next to it. And so you get what we got. You get color, viscosity, and high acid. You get both things existing because one's a late ripening grape varietal and one's an early ripening grape varietal, and they're sitting next to each other and they got picked together and vinified together. And they made this really compelling, interesting white wine. How cool is that? Yes. I didn't get a chance to do that when I was in Vienna, but if you're in Vienna, you can like hike from winery to winery, drinking wine. Sound perfect? Yes. And you can eat schnitzel. So think about pickles, pickled elements, and fried cutlet of pork or chicken, and this all day, all day. That's wonderful. What fun. That's a really good way to get something wrong, to try Gemischtersatz and to get to say that. Now, the charge for you is to go forth into the world and to tell as many people as possible that you had a Gemischtersatz last night and this week, and extend that into this month. And just to talk about the fact that you've had a Gemischtersatz, because that's fun to say. Cheers, everyone. It's fun to say, fun to taste with all of you, as always. Looking forward to it again next month. We're going to do our next wine dinner in February, and February's wine dinner is going to be a fun one. It is going to be featuring Chef Elena Kabatkina, who is the executive chef of Red Trunk Bakery. It'll be on February 13th. We're just finalizing details now, and it will be celebrating aphrodisiacs, appropriate for the occasion of one day prior to Valentine's Day. It'll be a menu of 7 courses celebrating aphrodisiac ingredients and preparations that celebrate sensuality and connectedness and connection and sensuality. So these are going to be a fun sequence of courses that we've been collaborating with Elena on. We'll have 3 sweet courses, 4 more on the savory side to play with, and pairings for each. So look forward to details coming out soon. And look forward to then tasting again right after Valentine's Day with another number that Julie will pick for us. Until then, enjoy this Gemischtersatz. I'm going to say it again, Gemischtersatz. Thank you. Danke.